Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of Terra's edge and looked out at the empty space around them. The stars looked the same as they had 15 years ago, but everything else had changed. Her ship floated near the edge of human space, far from the busy trade routes and alien worlds that once welcomed human visitors. Those days were gone now. Captain Jack Sullivan walked up beside her and handed her a cup of coffee. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep from the monitoring stations. Most of the crew worked in silence. They had learned to keep their voices low during the long years of isolation. "Any word from command today?" Kate asked. "Nothing new," Jack replied. "Same orders as always. Watch and wait." Kate nodded. She had been expecting that answer. For 15 years, humanity had kept to itself. No trade with alien worlds. No diplomatic meetings. No military patrols beyond their own borders. The rest of the galaxy had learned to live without humans, and most aliens seemed happy about it. The war with the Zephyrian Empire had ended badly for humanity. At least that was what everyone else believed. Human colonies had been destroyed. Human ships had retreated. Human representatives had stopped coming to Galactic Council meetings. The other species saw it as proof that humans were weak and broken. A sharp beep from the communications station broke the silence. Lieutenant Ben Clark looked up from his screen with surprise on his face. "Admiral, we're getting a priority transmission," he said. "It's coming from Luna Research Station." Kate felt her heart skip a beat. Luna Station had been silent for months. Dr. Lisa Hayes ran the facility there, but she never broke communication protocols. If she was sending a message now, something important had happened. "Put it through to my ready room," Kate ordered. "Jack, you're with me." They walked quickly down the corridor to Kate's private office. The room was small but comfortable, with a desk, 2 chairs, and a large view screen on the wall. Kate sat down and activated the secure channel. Dr. Hayes appeared on the screen. Her face looked tired and worried. Behind her, Kate could see banks of computers and monitoring equipment running constantly. "Admiral Morrison," Lisa began without greeting. "I need to report something urgent. We've detected massive energy signatures moving toward the galactic core." Kate leaned forward in her chair. "What kind of signatures?" "The kind we hoped we'd never see again," Lisa replied. "They match the theoretical profiles from the old archives. The ones marked with the highest security classification." Jack and Kate exchanged looks. They both knew what Lisa meant, but neither wanted to say it out loud. "Are you certain about this?" Kate asked. "I've run the analysis 12 times, Lisa sighed. "The patterns are unmistakable. Large biomechanical structures. Energy absorption capabilities beyond anything we've seen from current galactic civilizations. Movement patterns that suggest intelligence and purpose." Kate stood up and walked to the window. Outside, space looked peaceful and empty. But she knew that somewhere out there, ancient nightmares were waking up. "How long until they reach populated systems?" she asked. "Based on their current speed and direction, maybe 6 months," Lisa replied. "Maybe less if they can increase velocity." "Have the aliens detected them yet?" "No signs of it. Their sensor networks aren't designed to pick up these signatures. They're still focused on conventional threats." Kate thought about the Galactic Council and their proud fleets, the Altarians with their energy weapons, the Zephyrians with their massive warships, the dozens of other species that considered themselves the guardians of civilized space. None of them knew what was coming. "Thank you for the report, Doctor," Kate said finally. "Continue monitoring and send all data to Earth Command immediately." "Already." "Done, Admiral. They should have everything within the hour." The transmission ended, leaving Kate and Jack alone in the quiet room. "So it's really happening," Jack said. "After all these years of preparation," Kate nodded slowly. "Send a message to all station commanders. Tell them to prepare for possible activation of Protocol 7. Jack's eyes widened slightly. Protocol 7 had been theoretical for so long that many officers had forgotten it existed. It was the plan that would end humanity's silence forever. "Should I also contact President Miller's office?" Jack asked. "No need," Kate replied. "Earth," Command will brief him. Our job is to make sure our people are ready. As Jack left to carry out her orders, Kate remained at the window. Somewhere in the galactic core, ancient evil was stirring. The other species had no idea what they were about to face. They had spent 15 years believing that humanity was finished, that the war with the Zephyrians had broken the human spirit. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Humanity's silence had never been about defeat. It had been about preparation. For 15 years, while the galaxy moved on without them, humans had been getting ready for this moment. Kate smiled grimly as she looked out at the stars. Soon, everyone would remember why humanity had chosen to disappear, and they would understand that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that chooses not to fight until it absolutely has to. The first ship appeared without warning at the edge of Altarian space. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, and it looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before. The hull seemed to pulse with organic life, covered in what looked like metal veins that glowed with dark energy. Long tentacle-like appendages stretched out from its main body, reaching toward the nearest planet. Commander Vex High watched the sensor readings from his flagship with growing alarm. The Altarian Third Fleet had been patrolling this sector for decades without seeing anything more dangerous than smugglers and pirates. Now they faced something that made their most powerful warships look like toys. So the object is beginning to move toward Altara Prime, reported his tactical officer. Hail them, Vex High ordered. All frequencies. No response, sir. I'm not even sure they have communication equipment as we understand it. The massive ship ignored all attempts at contact and continued its slow approach toward the Altarian homeworld. As it moved closer, smaller objects began detaching from its hull. These were still enormous by normal standards, each one larger than an Altarian cruiser, but they moved with the fluid grace of living creatures on the independent trade station. Nexus Point, smuggler Pete Davis was loading cargo when the emergency broadcasts began. His ship, the Lucky Strike, was old and battered, but fast when it needed to be. Pete had learned long ago that being able to run quickly was more important than having big guns. All civilian traffic, this is Altarian Command, came the transmission. Unknown hostile forces have entered the system. Evacuate immediately. Pete looked up at the main display screen and felt his blood go cold. The news feeds were showing images from the outer system, and what he saw there made no sense. The alien ship was doing something to Altara Prime's moon. The rocky satellite was breaking apart, but not from weapons fire. It looked like the moon was being dissolved, turned into a stream of matter that flowed toward the massive vessel. Holy stars, Pete whispered. It's eating it. The Altarian Third Fleet moved to intercept the intruder. 50 ships armed with the most advanced weapons in known space opened fire at maximum range. Energy beams and projectile weapons struck the alien vessel's hull and simply disappeared. The massive ship didn't even slow down. Then it fought back, the tentacle-like appendages whipped through space faster than anything that large should be able to move. They wrapped around Altarian warships and began the same dissolving process that had destroyed the moon. Metal hulls turned to flowing liquid that was absorbed into the alien vessel's body. The crews inside had no time to escape. Pete watched in horror as the Third Fleet was systematically destroyed. Ships that had protected Altarian space for generations were reduced to raw material in minutes. The few vessels that tried to retreat were caught by smaller creatures that had detached from the main ship. None of them made it to the jump points. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in her laboratory on Titan, one of Saturn's moons, and studied the data flowing in from long-range sensors. Her facility was hidden beneath kilometers of ice, invisible to casual observation. For years, she had been working on projects that most humans didn't even know existed. The readings from Altarian space confirmed her worst fears. The energy signatures matched theoretical models that had been classified at the highest levels for decades. She pulled up files that carried security ratings so high that only a dozen people in human space were authorized to view them. The documents told a story that most of the galaxy had forgotten. Millions of years ago, an ancient civilization had faced the same threat that was now emerging in Altarian space. They had called them the Devourers, creatures that consumed entire worlds and used the absorbed matter to grow stronger. The ancient civilization had eventually defeated them, but only after losing most of their stellar empire. Elena scrolled through archaeological reports and genetic analysis data. The evidence was scattered across dozens of star systems, hidden in cave paintings and fossil records. But the pattern was clear. The Devourers had visited Earth during humanity's prehistoric period. They had tested the planet's defenses and found them wanting. But something had made them leave without completing the consumption process. The genetic markers were the key. Elena had discovered them years ago in human DNA, subtle modifications that made no sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Now she understood what they meant. Humanity's ancestors had not just survived the Devourer visit. They had been changed by it. Back in Altarian space, the massive ship had finished consuming the moon and was moving toward the planet itself. The civilian population was evacuating in panic, but their ships were too slow and too fragile. The smaller Devourer creatures picked them off one by one, adding their mass to the growing fleet. Ambassador Vex-High, Commander Vex-High's brother, stood in the Galactic Council chambers and demanded immediate action. Representatives from dozens of species argued about response options, but none of them had faced anything like this before. "We need to contact everyone," Vex-High insisted. "Every fleet, every weapon system, every ally we have." "What about the humans?" asked Counselor Zarathel, a reptilian delegate from the Saurian Confederation. The chamber fell silent. For 15 years, humanity had refused all contact with the galactic community. Their space was marked as off-limits, and automated systems turned away any ships that approached their borders. "The humans are finished," declared Commander Skextal of the Zephyrian Empire. "We broke them in the war. They have nothing left to offer." "But their technology was always impressive," Zarathel argued. "Perhaps they could help." "Help?" Skextal laughed harshly. "They couldn't even help themselves. We destroyed half their colonies and they ran like frightened children." Captain Julie Thompson piloted her ship, the Ghostwalker, through the debris field that had once been the Altarian Third Fleet. Her vessel was small and equipped with experimental stealth technology that made it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. She was recording everything for analysis back on Earth. The massive Devourer ship had moved on to its next target, leaving behind a dead system. Altara Prime was gone, consumed completely. The star itself looked dimmer, as if some of its energy had been drained away. Julie transmitted her findings through encrypted channels that only a few people in human space could access. "This is Ghostwalker reporting," she said quietly into her microphone. "The Altarians are gone. Total consumption of all matter in the system. The Devourer ship has increased in size by approximately 30%. It's heading toward the galactic core." Elena Rodriguez received Julie's transmission at her laboratory on Titan. She compared the new data with her historical records and felt a chill run down her spine. The ancient civilization had faced 3 Devourer ships. If the pattern held, 2 more would appear soon. She opened a secure channel to Earth Command and began composing her report. President Miller and his staff needed to know what they were really dealing with. The galaxy was about to face an enemy that could consume stars themselves. And most species didn't even know it was coming. The irony was not lost on Elena. For 15 years, the other species had dismissed humanity as weak and broken. They had celebrated human isolation as proof of their own superiority. Now they would learn that sometimes the smartest thing to do is step back and prepare for a fight that others can't even imagine. 2 more systems had fallen by the time Ambassador Vex-High made his desperate decision. The Saurian homeworld was gone, consumed in less than 12 hours. The Kaleri mining colonies had simply vanished, leaving behind empty space where planets had orbited for billions of years. 3 Devourer ships now moved through the galaxy, and conventional weapons had proven completely useless against them. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Representatives screamed at each other while their worlds died. Some species had already begun fleeing toward the outer rim, abandoning their territories in hopes of escaping the advancing nightmare. Others demanded suicidal attacks against enemies they couldn't understand. Vexhai stood in the council chamber and made an announcement that shocked everyone present. "I am going to human space," he declared, "with or without council approval." That's madness," shouted Commander Skekstyle. "The humans will not even answer our communications. They have ignored every message for 15 years. "Then I will go there myself and knock on their door," Vexhai replied, "because right now they are the only option we have left." Most of the council members laughed at him. The idea that isolated, defeated humanity could help against a threat that had destroyed the galaxy's most powerful fleets seemed ridiculous. But Vexhai had seen the sensor records from the lost systems. He had studied the energy readings and consumption patterns. This was not a normal enemy. Perhaps it would take an abnormal ally to defeat it. Vexhai's ship was small and fast, designed for diplomatic missions rather than combat. He traveled alone except for a minimal crew, broadcasting friendship signals on all frequencies as he approached the edge of human space. The journey took 6 days, and with each passing hour, more reports came in of systems going dark. The border between human and galactic space was marked by automated beacons that had been broadcasting the same message for 15 years. "Human space is closed to all foreign traffic. Turn back immediately." But Vexhai ignored the warnings and continued deeper into human territory. Admiral Kate Morrison watched Vexhai's approach from the bridge of Terra's Edge. Her ship had been tracking the alien diplomat since he crossed the border, but they had made no move to intercept him. Earth Command had given specific instructions to let him come. "He's persistent," observed Captain Jack Sullivan. "Most aliens turn back when they see our warning beacons." "Most aliens aren't watching their entire civilization get eaten," Kate replied. "Bring us alongside his ship. We'll escort him to the meeting point." The meeting point was a space station that Vexhai had never seen before. It was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest Galactic Council facility, and it looked like it had been built recently. The technology was clearly human, but it was far more advanced than anything humans had possessed during the war. With the Zephyr INS. Commander Rick Barnes met Vexhai in the station's main conference room. The human was calm and professional, dressed in a uniform that Vexhai didn't recognize. Behind him stood several other humans, including a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Maya Kim. "Ambassador Vexhai," Barnes said with a slight smile. "We've been expecting you." Vexhai felt confused by that statement. "Expecting me? But we sent no advance warning of this visit." "No, you didn't," Barnes agreed. "But we knew you would come eventually. Please, sit down. We have much to discuss." The conference room was comfortable but strange. The technology was clearly human, but it seemed decades ahead of what Vexhai remembered from before the war. The walls showed star charts that included systems he had never heard of, and the computers operated with a level of sophistication that rivaled anything in Galactic Council space. Vexhai explained the situation as clearly as he could. He showed Barnes the sensor readings from the destroyed systems and the energy signatures of the Devourer ships. He described the complete failure of conventional weapons and the panic spreading through the galactic community. Barnes listened patiently, occasionally asking questions that showed he understood the technical details better than most military commanders. When Vexhai finished his presentation, the human sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "We know about the Devourers," Barnes finally said. "We've been tracking their approach for over a decade. You've known?" Vexhai felt shocked. "Why didn't you warn anyone?" "Would you have believed us?" Dr. Kim asked. 15 years ago, when you were celebrating your victory over humanity, would the Galactic Council have listened to warnings from the defeated human race?" Vexhai had no answer for that question. She was right, and they both knew it. "Besides," Barnes continued, "warning you would have been pointless. Your technology isn't capable of fighting the Devourers. Your weapons can't penetrate their biomechanical hulls. Your ships are too slow to escape their consumption beams. Your entire military doctrine is based on fighting enemies that follow the same physical laws you do. And humanity is different? Vexhai asked. Barnes smiled. Humanity had a very good teacher. The Devourers visited Earth long ago during our prehistoric period. They tested our planet's defenses and found them lacking, but they also left something behind: genetic markers, biological modifications, a blueprint for what we could become if we chose to evolve. Dr. Kim activated a holographic display that showed human genetic sequences. We discovered the modifications decades ago, but we didn't understand what they meant until the Devourer ships began their approach. These genetic changes aren't random mutations, they're upgrades. Improvements designed to help us fight an enemy that our ancestors encountered millions of years ago. Vexhai stared at the genetic data, trying to understand what he was seeing. You're saying the Devourers modified your species? Not exactly, Barnes replied. They tested us and found us wanting, but the test itself changed us. Generation after generation, the genetic modifications became stronger. We evolved in response to a threat that wouldn't return for millions of years. The war with the Zephyrians, Dr. Kim added, was never the real threat. It was practice, a chance to test our capabilities and hide our true development. Every battle we lost was a lesson learned. Every retreat was a strategic withdrawal. We let the galaxy believe we were broken while we prepared for the real enemy. Barnes stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the space stations. Docking bays. Vexhai could see ships there, but they looked like nothing he had ever encountered. They were sleek and organic-looking, with hulls that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. The Galactic Council has 7 days, Barnes said without turning around. 7 days to evacuate all civilian populations from the projected path of the Devourer fleet. After that, humanity will handle the situation. Handle it how? Vexhai asked. These creatures have destroyed everything we've sent against them. Barnes turned back to face the alien ambassador. His expression was calm, but determined. Ambassador, for 15 years your people have believed that humanity was finished. You thought we were hiding in our own space, licking our wounds and fading away. You were wrong. Dr. Kim activated another display that showed star charts of human space. But these charts showed systems and installations that Vexhai had never heard of. Shipyards that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. Research facilities that spanned entire moons. Fleets of vessels that numbered in the thousands. We weren't hiding, Barnes continued. We were building. We were evolving. We were becoming something that could fight an enemy our ancestors met. Long ago, the Devourers think they're facing the same primitive species they tested millions of years ago. They're about to learn how much we've changed. Vexhai looked at the displays and felt a chill run down his spine. The scope of human development was staggering. They had built an entire shadow civilization while the rest of the galaxy thought they were beaten. What will you do after you defeat the Devourers? He asked quietly. Barnes smiled. The same thing we've been doing for 15 years. We'll go back to our own space and continue our development. We have no interest in conquering or ruling anyone. We just want to be left alone to become what we're meant to become. And if others threaten you again, then they'll learn what the Devourers are about to learn, Barnes replied. That humanity's greatest strength has never been our weapons or our ships, it's our patience. Our willingness to wait until the right moment to act. Our understanding that sometimes the best way to win a fight is to let your enemy underestimate you until it's too late for them to adapt. Ambassador Vexhai returned to the Galactic Council with humanity's ultimatum, but the response was exactly what he had feared. Most representatives refused to believe that the isolated humans could offer any real solution to the Devourer threat. Commander Skekstyle of the Zephyrian Empire was particularly vocal in his dismissal. 7 days? Skekstyle laughed harshly. The species we defeated thinks they can save us all. This is madness born from desperation. You didn't see what I saw? Vexhai insisted. Their technology has advanced far beyond what we knew. Their space station alone was larger than anything we've built. Propaganda, Skekstyle replied. Smoke and mirrors to make us think they're stronger than they are. The humans are finished. We proved that in the war. Counselor Zarathel studied. The data Vexai had brought back. The energy readings from human space were puzzling. The signatures didn't match any known technology, and some of the measurements seemed impossible according to current scientific understanding. Perhaps we should at least consider their offer, she suggested. What do we have to lose? Our dignity, Skextal snorted. I will not beg for help from a broken species that couldn't even defend their own colonies. While the council argued, President Dan Miller stood before a joint session of Earth's government in Geneva. The massive assembly hall was packed with representatives from every human colony and space station. For the first time in 15 years, the true scope of human civilization was being revealed to its own people. Citizens of humanity, Miller began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Today I can finally tell you the truth about our isolation. The war with the Zephyrians was not a defeat, it was a test. Every battle we fought, every colony we evacuated, every strategic retreat we made was part of a larger plan. The assembly stirred as Miller activated the main display screens. Images appeared showing massive space installations, fleets of advanced ships, and research facilities that spanned entire star systems. The audience gasped as they realized the true scale of what had been built in secret. For 15 years, while the galaxy believed we were broken and hiding, we have been preparing for an enemy our ancestors faced long ago. The Devourers have returned, and we are ready for them. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in the audience, watching as Miller revealed technologies she had helped develop. The genetic modifications, the quantum drive systems, the biomechanical hull designs that could self-repair and adapt. All of it had been built in preparation for this moment. General Amy Foster stood up as Miller called her name. She walked to the podium with the confidence of someone who had spent decades planning for a single moment. Operation Silent Thunder begins immediately, she announced. All defensive installations will come online within 6 hours. Fleet commanders will receive their deployment orders within the hour. Research stations will release all classified technologies to operational units. Across human space, the activation began. On hidden worlds, massive shipyards that had been disguised as asteroid fields suddenly came alive with activity. Ships that had been waiting in dark storage began powering up their revolutionary drive systems. Space stations that had appeared to be simple mining platforms revealed themselves as massive weapons platforms. Captain Jack Sullivan stood on the bridge of Terra's edge and watched as his ship's true capabilities came online. For 15 years, they had operated with only basic systems active. Now the quantum processors engaged, the dimensional shielding activated, and the biomechanical components of the hull began their awakening process. All systems green, reported Lieutenant Ben Clark. We're reading full integration with the fleet network. The fleet network was itself a marvel of human engineering. Every ship, every station, every installation in human space was connected through quantum entanglement communication systems. Information flowed instantly across light years, allowing for coordination that no other species could match. Admiral Kate Morrison received her deployment orders directly from Earth Command. Her task force would be the first to engage the Devourers, but she wouldn't be going alone. The display showed dozens of other ships converging on her position, vessels that had been hidden throughout human space for years. The ships themselves were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Their hulls were grown rather than built, using biomechanical technology that combined organic adaptability with advanced engineering. They could repair themselves, evolve to meet new threats, and operate in ways that conventional physics said should be impossible. Captain Julie Thompson's Ghost Walker was one of the most advanced ships in the fleet. Its quantum phase technology allowed it to exist partially outside normal spacetime, making it invisible to most sensors and immune to conventional weapons. She had been testing the technology for years, but now it would be used in actual combat. Dr. Carol Stevens monitored the Devourer advance from her research vessel Deep Thought. The enemy ships were moving faster now, having absorbed enough matter to significantly increase their capabilities. They were heading directly toward the Galactic core, where the most populated systems waited helplessly. "The pattern matches the historical data," she reported to Earth Command. "3 ships, increasing in size and power as they consume. They're following the same strategy used millions of years ago, but this time would be different." Carol's research had revealed the full truth about humanity's prehistoric encounter with the Devourers. The ancient creatures hadn't simply tested Earth and moved on. They had been driven away by something they found there, something that had made them mark humanity as a species to be avoided. The genetic modifications in human DNA weren't random. They were specific adaptations designed to fight biomechanical entities, enhanced reflexes, improved pattern recognition, increased resistance to energy-based attacks. Generation after generation, these modifications had grown stronger, until modern humans possessed capabilities their ancestors could never have imagined. Commander Rick Barnes prepared his ship for departure from the border station where he had met with Ambassador Vex High. The New Dawn was a prototype vessel, the first ship to fully integrate human consciousness with biomechanical technology. Barnes didn't just command the ship. He was part of it, his mind linked to its systems through quantum neural interfaces. "All departments report ready," came the voice of his executive officer, Lieutenant Sarah Walsh. "We're cleared for departure. Take us out," Barnes ordered. "Set course for the Devourer fleet." As the New Dawn moved away from the station, its hull began to change. The biomechanical components responded to Barnes's thoughts, optimizing the ship's configuration for the coming battle. Weapon systems that had never been tested in combat came online. Shielding technology that operated on principles the rest of the galaxy didn't understand activated. Pete Davis watched from Nexus Point as more refugee ships arrived from the inner systems. The smuggler had seen the first Devourer attack and the memory still gave him nightmares. But now he was hearing strange rumors from the Outer Rim. Ships that didn't match any known design had been spotted moving toward the Devourer fleet. "Who would be crazy enough to attack those things?" asked his co-pilot, a young woman named Kelly Price. "I don't know," Pete replied, watching the scanner displays. "But whoever they are, they better know something we don't." Back on Earth, President Miller concluded his address to the Global Assembly. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had shocked even their own people. For 15 years, entire generations had grown up believing they were a defeated species hiding from a hostile galaxy. "We chose isolation not from weakness, but from wisdom," Miller said. "We knew that someday the galaxy would face a threat too great for conventional warfare. We prepared ourselves to be the answer to that threat. Today, our patience and sacrifice will be justified." Dr. Maya Kim stood in her laboratory aboard the research station Prometheus, reviewing the final preparations for humanity's emergence. The genetic modifications that had been carefully cultivated over millions of years were about to be put to their ultimate test. The irony was not lost on her. The Devourers had created their own enemy by testing humanity so long ago. The genetic changes they had triggered were designed to produce a species capable of fighting them. Now, after eons of evolution and decades of technological advancement, that species was ready to fulfill its destiny. The 7-day countdown had begun. Soon, the galaxy would discover what humanity had built during their years of silence. The Devourers were about to learn that sometimes the prey becomes the predator. The human fleet arrived at the Kepler system just as the largest Devourer ship began consuming the last Altarian colony world. Admiral Kate Morrison watched from the bridge of Terra's Edge as the massive, biomechanical creature stretched its feeding tentacles toward the planet's surface. Millions of civilians were still trying to evacuate, their ships fleeing in all directions like insects scattered from a disturbed nest. "Fleet positions confirmed," reported Captain Jack Sullivan. "All ships are holding at the designated coordinates." Kate looked at the tactical display showing the human formation. 50 ships hung in space, each one different from the others but all sharing the same organic, flowing design characteristics. They looked small compared to the Devour vessel, which had grown to nearly twice its original size after consuming multiple star systems. "Open a channel to all frequencies," Kate ordered. "All frequencies, including the biomechanical resonance patterns." Lieutenant Ben Clark looked surprised. "Admiral, the resonance patterns are classified at the highest levels." "Not anymore," Kate replied. "It's time everyone learned what we've been preparing for." The communication array activated, sending Kate's voice across space on every possible frequency. But more importantly, it transmitted on the exotic wavelengths that biomechanical entities used for internal coordination. For the first time in millions of years, the Devourers heard a voice speaking their own language. "Attention, Devourer fleet," Kate's voice echoed through space. "This is Admiral Morrison of the human fleet. You tested our species once before. During our prehistoric development, we learned, we prepared. This is your final warning. Withdraw now, or discover why your creators feared us enough to send you." The massive Devourer ship stopped its feeding process. Its tentacles withdrew from the planet's surface, leaving the world scarred but intact. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the creature began to turn toward the human fleet, its biomechanical sensors focusing on the newcomers. Captain Julie Thompson piloted the Ghostwalker through the space between the two forces. Her ship's quantum phase technology allowed her to observe both sides without being detected by conventional sensors. She transmitted real-time data back to the fleet as the Devourer ship began to respond. "Multiple launch signatures," Julie reported. "The big one is releasing smaller units. Estimate 3,000 individual attackers, each one about cruiser-sized." The smaller Devourer units moved with fluid grace, their biomechanical bodies writhing through space like living serpents. They had been grown rather than built, designed for maximum efficiency in consuming and converting matter. Against conventional ships, they would have been unstoppable, but the human ships were not conventional. Commander Rick Barnes felt the new dawn respond to his thoughts as the first wave of attackers approached. The ship's biomechanical hull began to shift and adapt, optimizing itself for combat. Weapon systems that existed partially outside normal spacetime came online, drawing power from quantum fluctuations in the vacuum itself. "All ships, this is Barnes," he transmitted to the fleet. "Engage at will. Remember, these things learn and adapt. Don't give them time to study our capabilities." The first Devourer unit reached the human formation and immediately began its consumption process, extending feeding tendrils toward the nearest ship. But instead of connecting with solid matter, the tendrils passed harmlessly through the vessel's quantum-shifted hull. The human ship existed in normal space but could phase portions of itself into parallel dimensions when needed. Barnes smiled as he felt the new Dawn's weapon systems lock onto the confused Devourer unit. The ship's primary cannon didn't fire energy beams or projectiles. Instead, it projected a field that destabilized the quantum bonds holding matter together. The Devourer unit simply came apart at the molecular level, its biomechanical structure unable to maintain cohesion. Throughout the fleet, similar encounters were playing out. The human ships demonstrated capabilities that should have been impossible according to conventional physics. They phased in and out of normal space, manipulated matter at the quantum level, and operated with a level of coordination that suggested a shared consciousness. Dr. Carol Stevens monitored the battle from her research vessel, Deep Thought. The data streams flowing through her computers confirmed what she had theorized for years. The genetic modifications in human DNA weren't just about enhanced reflexes and improved cognition. They also allowed for quantum consciousness bridging, linking human minds together in ways that created a collective intelligence. "The fleet is operating as a single organism," she reported to Earth Command. "Individual ship commanders are making decisions based on information from across the entire formation. The Devourers have never encountered anything like this." The massive Devourer ship began to take notice of the battle's progression. Its smaller units were being systematically destroyed, and their accumulated mass was not being recovered. For The first time in millions of years the ancient creature was experiencing actual losses. It began to move toward the human fleet directly, bringing its own massive weapon systems to bear. Energy beams capable of cracking planets lanced out toward the human ships, but the beams seemed to have no effect. The vessels they targeted either phased out of normal space or absorbed the energy and redirected it back at their attacker. Captain Sarah Walsh aboard the destroyer Nightfall watched as her ship's hull literally ate one of the Devourer's energy beams. The biomechanical components in the armor plating converted the incoming energy into raw material for the ship's own systems, actually strengthening the vessel while denying power to its enemy. "This is incredible," she transmitted to the fleet. "We're not just immune to their weapons. We're feeding on them." Admiral Morrison nodded as she received Walsh's report. This was exactly what Dr. Rodriguez's research had predicted. The genetic modifications in human DNA had been designed specifically to counter biomechanical entities. After millions of years of evolution and decades of technological development, humanity had become the perfect predator for hunting devourers, but the ancient creature was beginning to adapt. Its attacks changed from simple energy projection to more complex quantum manipulations. It tried to disrupt the human ship's phase technology to overwhelm their quantum consciousness links, to find some weakness it could exploit. Each attempt failed. The human fleet had been designed with the specific goal of fighting this exact enemy. Every system had multiple backups. Every capability had been tested against theoretical devourer countermeasures. There were no critical weaknesses to exploit. Dr. Mayo Kim watched the battle from her laboratory aboard the research station Prometheus. The biomechanical components in the human ships were performing exactly as designed, adapting and evolving in real time to counter each new devourer tactic. But more importantly, the ships themselves were learning and sharing that knowledge instantly across the fleet. "The collective consciousness is working perfectly," she reported. "Each ship that encounters a new devourer capability immediately shares countermeasures with the entire fleet. They can't surprise us twice with the same trick." The tide of battle turned decisively when Commander Barnes ordered the New Dawn to make direct contact with the massive devourer ship. Using its quantum phase technology, his vessel passed harmlessly through the creature's outer hull and emerged. Inside its biomechanical core, interior space is massive, Barnes reported. "I'm reading organic computer systems, matter conversion chambers, and what looks like a central control matrix. Beginning surgical strikes against critical systems." The New Dawn's weapons were designed for precision work. Instead of trying to destroy the entire Devourer ship, Barnes targeted specific subsystems that controlled its ability to consume matter and coordinate with other units. Each successful strike reduced the creature's capabilities without triggering massive defensive responses. Other human ships followed Barnes's lead, phasing inside the Devourer and striking at its vital systems. The ancient creature found itself fighting an enemy that could attack from within while remaining immune to conventional counterattacks. Pete Davis watched the battle from a safe distance aboard the Lucky Strike. The smuggler had seen the Devourers destroy entire fleets without taking damage, but now he was witnessing something impossible. The massive biomechanical ship was actually being torn apart from the inside by vessels that seemed to ignore physical laws. "Kelly, are you seeing this?" he asked his co-pilot. "I'm seeing it, but I don't believe it," Kelly Price replied. "Those human ships are doing things that should be impossible. How are they phasing through solid matter like that?" Pete shook his head in amazement. "I don't know, but I'm glad they're on our side. Or at least I hope they are." The massive Devourer ship began to show signs of critical damage. Its biomechanical systems were failing one by one as the human ships continued their surgical strikes. The creature's feeding tentacles went limp, its energy projection systems flickered and died, and its coordination with the smaller units was completely severed. Admiral Morrison watched as the ancient enemy that had terrorized the galaxy began to collapse, but she knew the battle wasn't over yet. There were still 2 more Devourer ships approaching from other directions. The second Devourer ship arrived 3 hours after the destruction of the first. It appeared at the edge of the Kepler system, moving faster than anything that large should be able to travel, its biomechanical hull pulsing with dark energy as it scanned the debris field where its companion had died. Admiral Kate Morrison watched it approach from the bridge of Terra's edge, noting how its movement patterns had changed. "It's more cautious," observed Captain Jack Sullivan. "The first one came straight at us. This one is hanging back, studying our capabilities." "Good," Kate replied. "Fear makes enemies predictable." The massive creature stopped just outside the range where the first battle had taken place. It extended sensory tentacles into the debris field, analyzing the quantum signatures left behind by the human weapons. For several minutes, it remained motionless, processing information about an enemy type it had never encountered before. Then it began to change. Dr. Carol Stevens monitored the transformation from her research vessel deep thought. The Devourer ship's biomechanical structure was adapting in real time, growing new defensive systems and modifying its existing capabilities to counter the human tactics it had observed. "It's learning faster than we expected," she reported to the fleet. "The biomechanical components are reconfiguring themselves based on the battle data. This one will be harder to defeat than the first." Commander Rick Barnes felt the new dawn respond to his thoughts as he prepared for the second engagement. The ship's quantum consciousness link allowed him to share tactical information instantly with every other vessel in the fleet, but he could sense something different in the collective awareness. A note of concern that hadn't been there before. "All ships, this is Barnes," he transmitted. "The enemy has adapted. Expect new countermeasures against our phase technology and quantum weapons. Be ready to improvise." The second Devourer ship launched its attack with capabilities the first one had never possessed. Its energy beams were modulated to disrupt quantum phase fields, making it harder for human ships to avoid damage by shifting into parallel dimensions. Its smaller units moved in coordinated patterns that suggested they were sharing tactical information in real time, but humanity had been preparing for this possibility for decades. Captain Julie Thompson piloted the Ghost Walker through a formation of attacking Devourer units, her ship's adaptive hull systems automatically adjusting to counter each new threat they encountered. When the enemy tried to disrupt her quantum phase technology, the ship's biomechanical components simply evolved new methods of dimensional manipulation. "This is exactly what Dr. Rodriguez predicted," she transmitted to the fleet. "The Devourers learn and adapt, but so do we. And we do it faster." The battle that followed was more intense than the first engagement, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The human fleet had been designed with multiple layers of adaptive capability. Each time the Devourer ship developed a new countermeasure, the human vessels evolved past it within minutes. Dr. Maya Kim watched the engagement from her laboratory aboard the research station Prometheus. The biomechanical components in the human ships were performing beyond even her most optimistic projections. They weren't just adapting to enemy tactics. They were anticipating them, evolving countermeasures before the Devourers could fully implement their new strategies. "The collective consciousness is operating at maximum efficiency," she reported to Earth Command. "The fleet is functioning as a single organism with distributed intelligence. No individual ship can be overwhelmed because the entire fleet responds to threats against any one vessel." The second Devourer ship fell faster than the first, its adaptive capabilities unable to keep pace with humanity's superior evolution rate. When Commander Barnes led the final assault against its core systems, the ancient creature had no effective defenses left. It simply came apart under the coordinated quantum destabilization attacks, its biomechanical structure unraveling at the molecular level. The third and final Devourer ship never engaged in direct combat. It appeared at the edge of the system, scanned the debris fields where its companions had died, and immediately began retreating toward deep space. Admiral Morrison considered pursuing it, but President Miller's orders were clear. Humanity was to demonstrate their capabilities, not hunt down every last enemy. "Let it go," she ordered the fleet. "It will carry word of our capabilities to whatever created these things." They'll know that humanity is no longer the species they tested millions of years ago. In the aftermath of the battle, the Galactic Council found itself facing a completely new reality. The species they had dismissed as broken and defeated had just eliminated a threat that their combined fleets couldn't even slow down. Ambassador Vexhai stood before the council chamber and delivered a report that shocked every representative present. The humans didn't just defeat the Devourers, he said. They made it look easy. Their ships operated with technology that our science says should be impossible. They demonstrated capabilities that suggest they've been developing in complete isolation for far longer than 15 years. Commander Skekstyle of the Zephyrian Empire was notably quiet during the briefing. The revelation that humanity had been holding back during their war was particularly disturbing to him. If they had possessed such advanced technology 15 years ago, why had they allowed themselves to appear defeated? Counselor Zara Thel asked the question that was on everyone's mind. What do they want from us now? With capabilities like these, they could easily conquer the entire galaxy. That's the strangest part, Vexhai replied. They don't seem to want anything. Commander Barnes made it clear that humanity intends to return to their isolation. They have no interest in conquest or political control. President Dan Miller addressed the galaxy directly from his office on Earth. The transmission was broadcast on all frequencies to every inhabited system, ensuring that no species could claim ignorance of humanity's message. Citizens of the galaxy, Miller began, you have witnessed humanity's response to the Devourer threat. We emerged from our isolation not to conquer or rule, but to eliminate a danger that threatened all intelligent life. Our task is complete. We will now return to our own space and our own development. He paused, looking directly into the camera with an expression that mixed authority with patience. Some of you may wonder why we allowed the galaxy to believe we were defeated 15 years ago. The answer is simple. You needed to learn to stand on your own. You needed to understand that strength isn't measured by the size of your fleets or the power of your weapons. True strength comes from the wisdom to know when action is required and the patience to wait for the right moment. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in her laboratory on Titan, reviewing the final reports from the battle. The genetic modifications that had been carefully preserved in human DNA for millions of years had performed exactly as designed. Humanity had become what their prehistoric ancestors were meant to become, the ultimate predator for hunting biomechanical entities, but the real victory wasn't in the destruction of the Devourer ships. It was in the demonstration that evolution and patience could triumph over brute force and ancient malice. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most dangerous species is the one that chooses not to fight until it absolutely has to. Captain Pete Davis docked his ship, Lucky Strike, at Nexus Point and immediately began spreading the story of what he had witnessed. Within days, every spacer and trader in the Outer Rim had heard about the impossible human ships that could phase through solid matter and turn enemy attacks back on their attackers. They were like ghosts, Pete told anyone who would listen. Ships that could be there 1 second and gone the next. Weapons that could tear apart something the size of a moon without leaving any debris. I've been flying for 30 years and I've never seen anything like it. The human fleet began its withdrawal from galactic space as quietly as it had arrived. The advanced ships that had demolished the Devourer threat simply vanished, returning to the hidden bases and secret shipyards where they had been built. Within a week, the only evidence of their presence was the empty space where 3 ancient nightmares had once terrorized the galaxy. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of Terra's Edge as they crossed back into human space. Behind them, the galaxy was already beginning to return to its normal routines. Trade routes were reopening, fleets were returning to their home systems, and diplomatic missions were resuming their usual business. "Do you think they learned anything?" asked Captain Jack Sullivan. Kate smiled as she watched the stars ahead of them. "They learned that humanity still exists. They learned that we're not as weak as they thought. Most importantly, they learned that sometimes the best way to avoid a fight is to respect those who choose not to start one." Ambassador Vexhai returned to his homeworld with a new understanding of galactic politics. In his final report to the Altarian High Command, he wrote words that would be studied by diplomatic schools for generations to come. We mistook humanity's withdrawal for weakness, their silence for defeat. We forgot the most important lesson in galactic politics. Sometimes the most dangerous species is the one that chooses not to fight. Humanity's silence wasn't peace. It was a warning. And we're fortunate they chose to give us one.